All right, this is Richard Nickel here at Superbooth 2018 with Sonicstate, fresh from Pittsburgh, and we are showing our brand new sequencer this year. This is the Electronic Sequence Designer 128. It's a Eurorack module. It's the same size as our SV1 modules. That allows us to offer it in both the module form and in the black box format, so it can be a standalone sequencer. It does have MIDI in and MIDI out along with 4 channels of gate and CV. So it'll work with all of your Euro gear or all your patchable gear, but it'll also work with all of your MIDI gear. So if you have some legacy MIDI synths that you want to patch in and sequence, you can absolutely do that as well. 4 channels of sequencing, and those channels can be up to 32 steps each. There's 2 ways that you can function it, where you have 4 32-step sequences, and that would be sort of a page mode where you can page through the different sequences, or you have a performance mode where you put all of the live sequencing on one page. So you have the 32 sliders here and 32 buttons would control up to 4 sequences at once. So in the case we have running here, we have 3 sequences running. We have the top row is a 16-step sequence, which is running the pitch for this top synth. And then we have a second 8-step sequence down here, which is running this bottom synth. And then we have a third 8-step sequence here, which is actually controlling the filter cutoff of the top synthesizer. Set this very flexible. You can, if we wanted it to be one long sequence, we can very easily switch to one long 32-step, then we switch between the 2. Or if we wanted to have back to the 3, we could even put 4 running sequences on there all at once if we wanted.
And in terms of is there kind of patch storage? Like how many kind of sequences can we save?
You can say there is patch storage. You can save 4 sets, or all 4 sequences, and you can save 32 groups of them. So 32 groups of 4 that you can instantly recall on the fly, with the idea that you can use this. You could pre-program your set beforehand, go to the gig, and you have 32 sets of 4 available to you while you perform them.
And obviously you can still interact with them as they're going.
Absolutely, you can absolutely interact with them. Yeah. Because you're storing presets, the sliders aren't necessarily always showing you what's happening live. So what we've done to sort of pull you out of that if you get lost or you want to know where it is, we have this live button down here, which is great because we're in sequence C right now and you can see it's not live. So that means whatever's programmed in isn't exactly what the sliders are showing. But we can just hit that live button and it's going to pull it out and jump it to whatever the sliders are. Instantly give you feedback. So, okay, now I know exactly where I am. A nice way to sort of pull you out. In the modes where you have multiple sequences on one screen, it's always live. So it's always going to give you a representation of what's going on. Also, like right now, the sequence isn't running and you can hear, we can move the sliders up and down. It gives us instant feedback. If you want to sort of go through step by step and program, you certainly can. You can easily select the live step, set it to whatever you need to do, and sort of pre-program the whole thing like that if you want. You see we have the buttons here. These turn the steps on and off, so these would be a rest, for instance. You can do this sort of manually where you select the steps with your fingers, turn it on and off, sort of like, if you had something in mind, or if you just wanted to sort of guess around, you wanted to do some, like a Euclidean gate sequencer where you let an algorithm determine the sequence, you can do that as well. So we'll do that with the top 16-step sequencer now. We'll just scroll through and select. Okay, so it's got its own built-in kind of rhythmical exactly Euclidean sequences. Exactly. So what it's going to do is you're telling it how many steps you want, and it's going to try to evenly distribute those amongst however long the sequence is, with various degrees of success, but you always end up with something that's relatively musical. You can see if we sort of slide through these a little bit, how that changes. I can turn off. That's all of them, and we can slowly pull it back here. So it's just a nice way to get some ideas going.
And in terms of kind of, can we have the scales? Is there built-in scales? I can see across the top here.
Yeah, we have a bunch of built-in scales. You have microtonal, which is a sort of the quantized limit of the digital to analog converter. You have chromatic, major, minor, blues, Phrygian. A lot of different scales to choose from. They're all listed here. And then the nice thing is there's 2 custom scales as well, which you can go in beforehand and pre-program if you have a specific microtonal scale you like to work in, or if you have a more mainstream scale that maybe we didn't incorporate into the initial design, you can very easily go in and program that, and it'll be available for you for any sequence you want to use it on.
So how do you program that? You just program it on the unit and then save it?
Exactly. You just program it on the unit, you put it into edit mode, and you simply go through and you define the number of steps within an octave, and then you set each note within that. So it doesn't even really need to be a scale. You can create just a series of pitches, and that defines your custom scale for the unit. And then that can be spread across. You also have, you can change the resolution of the sliders from 1 octave, 3 octave, 4 octave, and 5 octaves. So that then scales up and down what you can do with it as well. In addition to that, there's a lot of different directions. The sequencer can run forward, it can run reverse, we can run it. So if we want to run the reverse, we also have, all the standard pendulum, stagger, which would be your drunk walk type. You have a skip a step where each time it runs through the sequence, it'll skip one of the steps and sort of cycle through. The idea is to create the illusion of a longer sequence than you have. We also have this great transpose mode, which if we go to direction and pick our transpose mode, what this does is it'll split the sequence into 2. So now we have this 16-step sequence up top is now an 8-step sequence, and then the second 8 steps is actually transposing the top 8. So it'll run through 8 here, and then that'll jump 1. And of course, you can change the lengths of all this stuff as well. If you wanted this to be 3 and this to be 7, you could certainly do that. You can change the division of them as well, so the sequences don't all have to be running at the same clock division. We could also shift notes. So if we wanted to shift some notes, we can just kind of randomly pick some notes to shift here and set the amount we want to shift it. And that's going to give us, it can be used almost like a swing style, but because you have control over the individual notes and the amount of shift, you can really dial it in. If you only want to shift 1 or 2 notes, you can certainly do that. There is swing as well, so if you want to incorporate swing, you can do that. You can change the gate length on individual steps, so if you want a very short gate length followed by a very long gate length, you can do that.
And slide between steps, is that? Or like glide between steps?
No glide between steps. To do that, we're using the SV1 glide. We wanted the functionality of the sequencer really to dictate the feature set and how it worked. And because of the way the user interface, you interact with it, there was no way to sort of do it in a natural way. We have ratcheting, so you can assign ratcheting to individual steps and then the depth of that ratcheting as well. And repeat, you can set the notes to repeat if you wanted some of the notes. We'll just randomly pick some notes here and set them to repeat. It's going to go ahead and stagger the notes, repeating them. So as far as sort of sequencer effects, it's very deep in the mods that you can create to create something a little bit unique, maybe that's not just a vanilla sequence.
So when are you hoping to kind of have it ready by?
This actually was ready at NAMM, and we held it back because we wanted to talk mostly about the microvolt. So it's going into production as soon as the second microvolt production goes in. So it'd probably be July. It'll be out. We haven't nailed down the price on it yet, but all of our stuff is always fairly priced, and I suspect it'll be about the same.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.